Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of The Suspense is Killing Me. And today I have the one and only Michael Clark. What's going on, dude? How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. It's Friday afternoon, and this is a great way to kick off the weekend.
That's right, man. And we are, I mean, basically coming together around two things: friendship at AuthorCon and the upcoming release of The Legend of Mildred Wells.
That's
Yeah,
right. And I
November 12th.
appreciate you mentioning that and plugging it and so forth.
Yeah, man. I was fascinated by this book description when I first laid eyes on it, and our conversations about your work and everything, and then being able to hang out with you at AuthorCon in that was last March. Now is it?
Yeah, I think
It's
it was what the
crazy.
last couple
April.
days. Was it April or yeah,
Yeah,
31st to the 2nd or something? I forget, but
yeah, it's
right around then.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the spring, and just hanging out with you and Kev was great. Just had such a great time talking with you guys, and it couldn't wait to get my eyes on some of your work. So this is really cool for me because we've stayed in good contact on social media and everything, and you're just always so supportive. And so for people that are listening to this that aren't following you yet, I'm gonna do something I normally do at the end of the show and say you guys need to jump on socials and find Michael and follow him and do that before you forget, because the rest of this episode's going to be great and you're going to be happy you did.
Please
All right.
do.
Yeah, please do. By the way, is there a particular platform that you're more present on, or are you like me, you just carpet bomb them all?
Yeah, I think I'm more present on Twitter, and I still call it Twitter, as most of us do. But that's where like the authors hang out, and we talk shop, and
Sure.
friends. And I'm on Facebook too. I'm on Instagram, but sparingly. I probably should be more. Um, and I've made I think 3 TikTok posts, but it's there's only enough aren't enough hours in the day, to
Yeah. Yeah, that
do
is
everything
true.
you should.
Yeah. Or at least everything you want to.
Yeah, exactly.
So so you've been writing horror now for a while, right? And you've been publishing for, I think it's what, 5 years now?
Yeah, I started I think 7 years ago. It took my time writing the first one, and which was called at the time The Patience of a Dead Man.
Mm.
Um, and just so people who are listening know, the new book, which is coming out November 12th, is The Legend of Mildred Wells. It's the same story. Um, the Patience of a Dead Man was a trilogy made up of book one, The Patience of a Dead Man, book two, Dead Woman Scorned, and book three, Anger is an Acid. And
Mhm.
they were self-published, and I they were my baby, and I tinkered with them, and tried to I changed it a bunch of times, had it reformatted, new covers. Couldn't leave it alone basically until I took it to Bridget's Gate Press, and they have a crackerjack editor there named MJ Pankey, who basically put the screws to me, and we got it right finally, and I finally feel like it's finished.
Nice.
So yeah, it's come full circle, and I've written a couple of books in between then and now, but one of them's published and one's not. And now I'm wandering on the conversation. Did that answer everything?
Yeah, yeah. No, you're not wandering, dude. That's great. I mean, I'm hoping to get where you're at within the next 6 months. I would like to finish my series and then do an omnibus version of the series for people that want everything in one book. So this was a little bit of research for me as well to see how well someone else had done this, um, and to see someone who walked down a similar path, like wrote each individual book and treated them like individual projects, although they're part of a series, and loved on them all the way through it up until you could get them all together and then say, okay, how do I present this entire series as one piece of work? And so what motivated you to do that instead of just leaving them as three, a trilogy essentially, right?
um, One was I heard Ken McKinley on a podcast. He used to publish Silver Shamrock until they closed up shop. And he said, I never understood why people write trilogies, because this is a trilogy. I mean, that's a different thing than a series. I mean, a
Mm,
series can go on, and people that fall in love with a series Yours is at least 4 books, right?
Yeah, it'll be 4 total if you consider, Bury the Child as a prequel novella. In Amazon, it's related, but yeah,
Yeah. So I
it's gonna
don't
be
know
4
if you
books.
if that'll be I don't know how that'll fall, you know,
Mhm.
and I don't have a lot of experience with this, but he always said, or he said, I don't understand why people release them in trilogies because the third one never sells as good as the first one. That like the read through is not
Right.
100%. So I was like, damn, you know, and I had nothing else to do. And I figured, why don't I take these 3 books and just sandwich them in one binding? So I did that. Like I even had to like reduce the font and came up with this 800 page, 3 pound doorstop.
That was the original
That it
c
was called The
combination.
Patience of a Dead Man Complete.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And like I mailed one to the UK once and it was like 50 bucks, you know.
Oh
So
my
yeah.
god! Because it literally is 3 pounds.
It's literally 3 pounds. I put it on the scale, it says 3.0, you know,
Wow.
in a small cardboard box. So
Yeah.
it's too big. Um, and like I said, thank God Bridget's Gate wanted to do it. And what I did, I call this the Legend of Mildred Wells, like the Patience of a Dead Man Complete, optimized to be read in one book.
Mm.
Um, Ken McKinley turned out to be right, by the way. Like just the number of reviews and page reads and whatever in Anger is an Acid, which was the third book compared to The Patience of a Dead Man, there was a big drop off.
Mm.
And you know, to me, there's like 3 steps to that story, and but they're all one story.
Mm.
And if you just read the first third, um, you know, the highest praise came for the second book. You
Oh.
know, so you're missing out. Um,
Well, and so that's actually an interesting thing, if you don't mind me pulling on that thread just a little bit, because I mean, the sophomore slump isn't just a music thing,
I
you
know.
know? There's a lot of people that they get into that second book and they kinda get a little nervous in a series, whether it's a trilogy or more, even in a duology. Like, there's people that they just feel this tremendous pressure to get the second book done a certain way if the first one's had
Mhm.
successful readership. So I love hearing that your second book got so much good attention.
I actually don't even think of that as my second book, even though it was. It's not anymore because it, you know, Dead Woman Scorned, which was the name of it, doesn't exist anymore. So
Mhm.
basically, when I met you in AuthorCon, I had 1 book. I had Hell on High, which
Right.
is my Mount Everest, Dead Bodies on Mount Everest book.
Such a cool
And
looking
because
cover
I
too.
unpublished The Patience of a Dead Man because I knew that The Legend of Mildred Wells was in the works, and I just wanted to get it off of there, you know, and let it, you know, just get an inferior product off of the market. And
Right.
so I had 1 book when we were in AuthorCon. Now I have 2. I kind of look at Hell on High as my sophomore effort, but to go back to imagining Dead Woman Scorned as my second book, the reason that it wasn't hard to write and it didn't slump, I think, is because the whole trilogy is a haunted house. And the first book, The Patience of a Dead Man, was about the oh my gosh, I have a ghost kind of a stage.
Mm.
And the second part, the second book, Dead Woman Scorned, is a look back on who that ghost is and who that ghost was and their origin story. And I think people, even though the ghost is, the entity is evil and unlikable, there was a little bit of understanding about why they are the way they are, kind of a thing. So it's a total change of gears. That second part of the book, even though in the Legend of Mildred Wells, it's not 3 parts anymore. I made it. I broke it out into 5. So it's kind of. I just wanted to destroy the illusion of a trilogy.
Mm.
Got rid of the cliffhangers, got rid of the recaps and so forth, and optimized it for one reading, for 1 book.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, um, it's really cool to hear about how you kind of approached the work after it was published and get it all into um, this new word count, if you will, because you were telling me beforehand, you went from I mean, you reduced your page count significantly by putting them all
Well,
together and then going through that final pass.
another positive about this is like, you come out with your first book. It's obviously your first year. You're a rookie. It's
Yeah,
the prose isn't as good.
right,
Um, and the Legend of Mildred Wells is, a fifth year writer looking at it with a fresh eye, with a professional editor, and getting rid of the things that might throw a reader off, to a
right.
new author. So yeah, definitely, that's another benefit to the whole redo is that it's not a rookie work anymore. It's like I'm not gonna. A lot of authors look at their first book and say, "Oh God, I read that and I can't stand it." Well, I don't say that anymore because I redid it.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I mean, even as a like you were saying that freshman, kinda show, when you put that first book out, and then you go back a couple years later and you read what you wrote and you're like, "Wow, I don't use, those same terms anymore or
Mhm.
combinations of."
I used to do a lot of ellipses,
Yeah.
like dot, dot, dot,
Yeah.
driving people crazy.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my habits too, and it's funny because you could do that in a suspenseful read to help build tension, but, you realize it's like they're just not completing a sentence. How
Yeah,
many times does that really happen in, in normal conversation or even
exactly.
in even, like, if you were to convert it to a different art form like a movie, you wouldn't see a movie where people were just constantly not finishing sentences.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like
It's a gimmick that doesn't, stand the test of time, like
yeah,
it gets tired quick, and you have to conform to, um, some rules, as you go on, you
yeah.
can't, another one I used to do is like a lot of smoke screens, like, aha, you're not gonna see this coming, but like a lot of people do. Living and learning.
Yeah, that's good, man. Well, you've seen, my stuff, so you know what I'm talking about when I say this, but, I feel like my voice changed with each book as well. Like, it just gets a little more clearer, a little more succinct, a little more focused on the things that matter to the reader, a little bit easier and smoother.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that is a mileage thing. It's like the more words you write, the better the words get. And so the fact that you had so many words in your series, it's this whole piece of work. There should be a significant amount of growth across that body, and
Yeah.
it's good to see that you were able to even take it to another level.
Well, I cut 75,000 words out of the
That's
trilogy,
wild.
before I gave it to MJ, the editor.
Wow.
And she goes, "I was supposed to get this many words, but I don't see this many words." I go, "Yeah." And then I what I did was I was still working on the third book. She was like
Mhm.
starting on the first one, before we combined them. And I go, "Here's an example." And I took a paragraph that I had just worked on and showed her a before and after. And they said the exact same thing, but there was 20% less words. It was just like there was a little bit of with the first Patience of a Dead Man book. Wow, look at this. I can make a book as thick as Stephen King, or look, mom, of course your mom, look at that. This can fit on your bookshelf, it's
Yeah,
alongside other books you've read. It's a hold in your hands kind of a pleasure. And that's short lived. You pretty
yeah.
soon you have to like. I actually got called out. I had a rough lesson which was very valuable, but still to this day, it's like one of those where you're like, wish I had that over to do over again, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't know if you know Book Monster on
Mhm.
Twitter.
Yep.
George
Yeah.
Ranson is
Yeah, George's great.
become a good friend of mine. He got Sadie Hartman's attention to for the Patience of a Dead Man, and
Hmm.
Twitter 5 years ago was a little bit different than it is now because right now it's kind of a you know house on fire. But she used to post all the time, and a lot of people were there that aren't anymore, and it was just a little bit different. And I wanted to get her attention so badly. He got it for me, and she said, "Okay, we're gonna do." She had a group called the Nightworms,
Mhm,
and she still has a Nightworms book package. But it was a group of you know uh, YouTubers and Instagrammers and stuff, including Andrew, by the way,
mm,
who would read, and they had a Nightworms book party for my book, and it came back mixed, including like she was on the negative side because of my prose. Like
mhm.
it was because of the extra stuffing in the book, and it broke my heart. But
Yeah.
I went right back to it and I attacked it. And until this, like I was always kind of like, okay, the two main characters, they get a little romantic too quick. All right, well, I'll fix that. I can't tell you how many times I reformatted the book or paid to have it reformatted because I can't do it myself. And anyway, that was a growing pain life lesson, and reason that I couldn't stop touching the damn thing.
Well, I guess I could count myself fortunate in some ways and unfortunate in others that I hadn't read a word of them until I got this.
Yeah, no, that you're,
And
you're fortunate.
so I got the polished
Yeah,
deal. You too can have the polished deal, people. Um, and when you sent this to me, I said, "Wow, this is impressive." And then when I realized it was a trilogy, basically, flipped into not so much an omnibus, but a single piece of work, I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes a lot of
you
sense."
just said it perfectly. Like I don't call it an omnibus either because it's not a collection.
Yeah,
It's not even a trilogy anymore.
right.
I like to say optimized,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been reworked so that it's one book, and it is thick. It's 570 pages or something like that. But it's as streamlined as it can be. It used to be three books that were all designed to hold your attention all the way through. So I don't think I'm wasting your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And honestly, I, we I'm saying we grew up, assuming I know anything about your upbringing, but um, we, the horror community that did a lot of reading through the 80s, 90s, and now into the 2000s, we've been reading Stephen King this whole time. And he
hmm
he writes tomes. I remember sitting there trying to get through it at like, I don't know, maybe 14 years old,
yep,
or The Stand or Tommy Knockers. I remember reading that and being like, wow, this is a long book. But when
yes.
it's done well, you don't care,
No, no,
you know?
exactly.
And you to me, there's a level of immersion that you can achieve in a book like that you can't get in a shorter shot. So if, like, I write anywhere from 40 to 70,000 words on average for a book, and I'm very aware of the fact that if I'm gonna write something that is short on the shorter end, the pace has to be very high. I mean, a lot has to happen in that
Yeah,
shorter amount of words so that you leave feeling like you consumed the whole book. You had your meal. It wasn't just like an appetizer,
right.
which is different than like a novel or whatever.
And times are different. Like people don't want
Sure.
these giant books. Maybe by Stephen King they do, because he's got a track record and so forth. But I
Mhm.
mean, novellas are very popular now,
Yeah.
and we all have smartphones, and the
Yeah.
the attention span is shortened
Yeah.
greatly. I mean, I used to get a Stephen his new book every year for Christmas,
Mhm.
and it's not that way anymore. It's video games and it's all kinds of stuff. There's so many things competing for our attention.
Now, if I may, um, ask you to, without spoilers, obviously, just unfold what what is this thing about now in its current format, now that we have this book,
Yes.
The Legend of Mildred Wells.
Okay.
And,
Well,
what
um,
outside of just like back cover, I guess, surfacing, like,
okay, I'll give you
Mhm.
like I'll walk you into it.
Sure.
Um, it's still the same story. So if you have read The Patience of a Dead Man, all the way through Anger is an Acid. You know the story. And I didn't change the ending or, the beginning or anything like that. It was just kind of the smoothed out. But what it is it's a guy, his name is Tim, who is a handyman construction. He owns a small construction company. And he goes through a divorce. And he basically loses his company. He's down to himself, and one other employee. He lives in northern Massachusetts, along the New Hampshire border, and he decides the best way to get back on track is to find like a fixer-upper and work alone in the house himself while his coworker or employee takes care of the small jobs. He's not building houses anymore. He's fixing kitchens and that kind of
Right.
thing. So keep the money flowing, but also work on this side project. So in my mind, the first scene in the book was
Mm.
him alone in this house, which I used to live in, by the way. It's in central New Hampshire. I lived in there when I was a kid. It's a farmhouse. It's 23 acres. It's got a pond. It's got a
Wow.
field. Inside the forest, half of the property was forested. Was a like a I don't know if it was a tree plantation or like a overgrown Christmas tree grove. So
Yeah.
you would be walking through the woods, and all of a sudden the trees are in perfect rows, and it was like a hallway, kind of like the hotel in The Shining, except it's trees. You're looking down,
Right.
the trees blocked out the sun, so it was eerie. Um, but so the scene that I grew the book around was him working these 18-hour days trying to fix this house and flip it. And as he's sawing or whatever, and the sun has gone down, a little boy comes running through the living room. And it's a little boy that shouldn't be there at 11 o'clock at night or whatever. And he's obviously a ghost.
Mm.
So he sees this and he runs. He runs, his truck is parked around the side of the house, but he just runs. He runs down the road and because he's in a panic. And he, gets 300 yards down the road and cuts up into the field so he can just look back at the house at the living room window, which is the only one lit up in the house with a painter's light because he was the only one in there. And he realizes, like, well, what are you going to do now? Could you were gonna sleep there. What do you do? Do you go to a bar and get drunk and go back and after midnight, or do you just, you know, you're either gonna lose all your money and then. By the way, his ex-wife he has two daughters, and she's very antagonistic.
Mm.
So he eventually wants his daughters to, come visit him.
Yeah.
And if he tells his ex-wife that the place is dangerous, she won't allow it to happen. So he's got to kind of keep that quiet, and he's also got to deal with his situation,
His
and
haunted house situation.
this haunted house situation. Now the little boy is the least of his problems, it turns out, because the
Right.
little boy's mother is also there, and her name is Mildred.
And that's where things start to get fun.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. I appreciate that. So would you would you consider this? I get this question a lot because I write haunted house stuff. But for me, it's never about the house being haunted. It's about people being haunted by something, right? And
Hmm.
it's not necessarily a house. It's a spirit or it's a ghost or it's something,
Yes.
something that's occupied the house or that's occupied a property or in like my series case is basically you know there's this one area that's ripe for this stuff, but it's the family that's cursed or haunted
Hmm.
or whatever the case is. So when you think about your story in the context of being a haunted house story or a paranormal story, did you at all have the same response I did, mentally when I started thinking about doing this? Like, I don't want this to be like a typical haunted house story. Was there any
Honestly,
intent in
this
that?
is a great question because I didn't even know it was a haunted house story
Ah,
until I became part of the Twitter community. and people are like, "That's cosmic horror, and that's a haunted house, and that's a vampire," all these terminology. I'm like, "Cosmic horror? What's that? Space? Outer space?" I didn't
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
you know? So I
Yeah,
didn't know it was a haunted house. So, but you're right that it's not that the house is not evil.
right,
It's the entities that chose to stick around,
right.
and we talk about your book, we talk about my book, and like you hit so many notes that I was trying to hit too. And
Mm,
I don't know if I pulled it off, but you certainly did. Like, first of all, it's an alternate time period.
right,
Like yours is 1966, mine's 1971.
right.
Um, I chose that because I kind of feel like technology kind of takes the fear out of things. Like
I
a
love
phone
that.
ringing on the table is way scarier than getting a strange text message or something, because we all get strange text messages.
Yeah,
And like, I didn't want to fall into the trap of, oh, the battery's dead. I can't call, like the
right,
cliches, that kind of thing. Um, Another thing we both have is a path into the woods, and there's some graves in the woods.
right. Which is I was happy to see that, by the way, when I started reading
Well,
yours.
so was I. I'm like,
I was like,
holy
"Yes."
shit. Well, I love eerie, and creepy. Like I like I wish there was not a series called Goosebumps because every time I say Goosebumps, that's the first thing people think of.
Yeah,
But when you feel that goose flesh raise on your arms, or on the hair on the back of your neck, that's we don't have enough of that.
right,
A vampire doesn't do that for me.
right.
Cthulhu and I don't know. So many things just don't do it. Grief horror doesn't do that.
Mhm.
But um, but when you see like in your book, like wet footprints down the hallway, or you hear splashing in the bathroom at midnight or whatever.
What the
Like,
hell is that?
yes, I'm out. you know,
Yeah,
it's eerie, and it's not even violent, and
right.
it's just creepy as hell.
Speaking of
Uh,
creepy as hell, what is that behind you?
that's Mildred. I set it up for you.
I've been waiting for the right time to
Yeah,
ask.
no, like
It was a perfect segue.
my wife is the original cover model for Patients of a Dead Man.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So I bought a dress on I don't know if it was Etsy or something,
Okay.
like an old farm dress. So that's the old farm dress on a mannequin.
Nice.
And yeah, so Josie, my wife, is the old cover model.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
and
I like those covers, by the way.
yeah, so I have Mildred and I have the dress, and she even dressed up as her on Halloween once and glued flies to her face and everything. So
That's great. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just had to
no, I'm
ask.
glad you noticed. Like at first we talked for a little bit before
Yeah.
this recording started, and
And I didn't say a
I'm
word.
like, he doesn't see it, okay, but you did,
Of course.
yeah. So yeah,
That's
I
awesome.
live and breathe this story. I've read it, 500 times, and
Yeah,
like when you read it that many times, you see the parts that really don't work over time,
sure.
and then finally again with the editor too. It was just she called me out on a few things that I never called myself out on, and we had to change it. She's like, no way would I have my daughters there. We would be gone. I'm like, shit. I'm in the first third of the book, and I gotta convince her or rewrite it so that it's more believable. So
Yeah.
it's definitely been improved by MJ Pankey.
Well, you're saying something that I think is important to note. Um, and the reason I say this is I get a chance to talk to a lot of authors, both as a fellow writer and also through the through the press, right? At Sobolo, where we've got a lot of work that comes in and we read these novellas and novels, and we're constantly looking and screening for certain types of stories or certain behaviors in the authors or whatever. And there's a few things that just jump out automatically. And it's harder to see them when you're the writer.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into the trap when you're the one who's just in a zone, dumping words, grooming them, they become part of the scenery of what you experienced when you were writing, and you can oftentimes miss things. And I feel like having a developmental editor or a editor period working with you while you write, or if not while you write, once you're finished writing, it just takes the story to such another level. So for the self-pubbers out there, you're looking at two people that have self-published, and I never did it without an editor because I knew it would be so much better with an editor. And I love that you brought up that she caught things like stereotypes or decision making or things like that, because of all the times I've had feedback in a draft that I've sent to Zach, my editor, it's always those types of things that I feel a little guilty about. He'll be like, "Dude, really? It's getting cold in the room? Really?
Yeah, I
You
know.
gonna do that? Are we doing that?" Because he hasn't seen the next chapter, and I'm like, "No, it's not what you think. The furnace is actually down." It's like it's not
Yeah.
like the temperature drops because we're around spirits. Little things like that. They're just catching like a reader would who's never seen these words, and it's so valuable. So we all thank. You said it was MJ.
Yes,
Yeah,
MJ Pankey, yep.
we all thank MJ for her hard work because it makes things so much better.
Yeah, yep, and she's a mother, like, she's like, like I told you, he's got daughters, and they do eventually visit, and it's not a safe situation, but he can't say much about it, and
Right.
she's like, "Nope, I'd be," "if I were him and I wouldn't be there, I'd be in a hotel," and I'm like, "Alright, well, guess what? I'm gonna think about that for 3 days and"
I'll show you when I make the edit.
Yeah, exactly. You're
Well,
gonna
yeah, there's a
frustrate me.
moment of reckoning because you have to send it back. It's like if I don't take your advice, then I got to explain why I didn't take your advice.
Well, I honestly, we worked together first with, Hell on High, which was
Mhm.
my 4th, but now 2nd, book,
Right.
and, we clicked right away. She's just really good,
Excellent.
yeah, like, I trust her. So,
All the love for MJ. Good for you, man.
yep.
Thanks, MJ. We appreciate you if you ever hear this. um, okay. So I guess just as a fellow series writer, there's a process that we kind of go through in our minds when we're writing a book that's going to be related to another book. It's like, am I ending this the right way? Is it like I've had these conversation with my editor, like, is this too hard a cliffhanger? If I cut this here, is it too abrupt? Is it leaving them unsatisfied? That type of thing. When you took all of those finished works and you got to put them together and put them into this book, how did it change that experience for the readers? Because you had mentioned before you removed some cliffhangers and a couple things like that, but um, you're not just saying you did that because a book can't have them mid book. You did that because it was the right thing to do for the story,
Yeah.
and that's changed when you decided to make this one continuous story instead of three
It
disparate.
changed the order of some of the chapters, like, I
Wow.
really had to, like, rethink the thing as, you know, not, not 3 bodies of work where let's say there I write short chapters, so let's just say that there used to be 100 chapters in each book, but that's probably a little high. Um, you'd work around that and you'd be like, "Okay, I need to put 97 to 84 and blah, blah, blah," whatever, that kinda thing. But then when you're working on a big book and you have 300 chapters, and you're changing the endings of some books because I think I used the same cliffhanger twice,
Mhm.
like, because it jumps back in time.
Right.
The reason is, like, I told you it happens in 1971 when Tim is trying to rebuild the house and all that stuff, and
Mhm.
then I also said that book 2 is more about the entity Mildred and her origin, so it goes back into the 1800s,
Right.
you know?
Well, time hopping.
Yeah, so that kinda had to be consolidated, so because I know a lot of people hate, you know, I hate it when it goes flipping back and forth, that kind of thing. And I do too. If it's a movie that's like, oh my God, we're back in time again, that kind of thing. I wanted to reduce the number of times that
Right.
so that was a big part of it.
Right.
It's like let's go here and then let's go there and then let's bring it up to modern day again, so
I don't see as much of that anymore as I used to, and maybe that's why, there's some people have been become more vocal about their sensitivity to that. I think the last book I read that had a significant amount of not a significant amount, but a healthy amount of time hopping, um, may have been Within These Walls from, Anya Alborn.
I haven't read that one.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting twist on a haunted house because, um, well, I won't ruin it for you, but it's a fun read because it's basically the premise is that this guy is a journalist slash author on the edge of he's like a true crime author.
Mm.
That's why I say journalist slash author. And he has knocked the book out of the park, but since then he's had a hard time replicating his success. And he's getting nervous
I
that
think I
he's
have this book on my shelf, but
do
I
you?
just haven't gotten to it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting nervous that he's only got like 1, 2 chances left, and then the industry is gonna kind of drop him,
Mm.
and he's gonna have a hard time sustaining his living. And, because he writes true crime, he's fascinated by all these true crime stories around the country, and one of them is this serial killer slash '70s hippie cult kinda dude, kind of like M Charles Manson-esque, small group, small cult lead kinda guy, on the West Coast, who is in prison for life for these murders, and he sends this author an email or a handwritten letter that says, "I've never talked about my case publicly. I've refused to talk to the media. I've refused all these book deals. I'll talk to you
Mm.
if you go live in the
That
house."
sounds good so far.
Yeah, he's like, "You gotta
Mm.
go live in the house where it all went
Wow.
down. And then if you do that and you come visit me at the prison, I'll talk." And so the guy's like, "This is it. This is my ticket. Like, this will get my career back on
Yeah,
track."
I
And
like that.
so his wife, nothing's good between them right now. So she's like, "If you do this, it's going to be our end." And he's like, "Well, you don't really want to be with me anyway. So sure, why not?" And he takes his daughter, his teenage daughter, out to this place and doesn't tell her that, this place was the scene of a horrific series of crimes. And they live in this house. And things start to happen. But
Yeah.
there's some time hopping based on the relationship between the living and the dead in the book to kind
Mm.
of touch on your point where you have a
Yeah.
ghost from a different time period.
That's another thing is I found that you can't get away from some cliches.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
when you are in the process of Tim moves into the house and the little boy comes running through the door, you need to figure out who the kid is, and
Mm.
what's going on. So what do? You go to the library, you look at the microfilm, like I was like, damn, I don't want to be cliche, but so I
Yeah.
will minimize those parts as much as possible. But yeah, I mean that especially where the book takes place in 1971, you can't
Mm.
go looking on the internet, it's got to be the old, I felt like I was uh, rewriting The Changeling, the movie The Changeling with George C.
Yeah.
Scott, where they're going looking at the microfilm, like, damn, this has been written before. I
You're
hate that.
you're
I
bringing up some old school stuff, man. I haven't seen Microfiche since '99,
well,
maybe 2000.
I'm kind of old school. Your book takes place in 1966, and
Yeah.
that's when I was born.
Uh, there you go. Great year. Great
Yeah.
year. um, so what made you want to tell your story in 71? I mean, besides the technology factor that you already mentioned, is there something else that drew you
Yeah, I
to
lived in that house in 1971.
okay, so you
Yeah.
wanted to be as relevant to your own
Well, I
experience.
remember that like it I have since returned to the property, like, and like I even snuck on and snuck into the woods and looked in the grove and everything, which was not what I remembered it to be
Yeah,
as a, you
kid.
know, 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lived there from age 5 to 9, and I remember it in that certain time frame. I remember that the phone would ring, and I don't know what it's like with a big screen TV in the living room.
Mm,
I remember that there was like all the 1970s electronics and what the lighting was like. So,
mm.
and how cold the damn place was, and that kind of a thing. We didn't have kerosene heaters or whatever they're using up there now. Like all these
Yeah.
modern day things that take the like the radiators used to clank, you know?
Mhm.
Like they'd be heating up and clank, clank,
Yeah,
clank, and
expanding metal.
on a good day, it was scary. So yeah, that's definitely that, and the technology were the reason that I wanted to do it then.
And, I mean, there's some regional familiarity, obviously, you still live in the Northeast, and,
Yeah.
having lived in that place, you were very familiar with it, but do you feel like there's and I do, just for the record, I'm answering the question before I ask it to you, but do you feel like there's something up there's something different about that area of the country that kind of lends itself just so damn well to these kinds of stories? I mean, the Northeast is just great
Well,
for
winter is always about death. So that's something. Stephen King lives in Maine,
yeah,
that helps. But, there's other like New Orleans is pretty
sure.
rich with,
Oh, yeah.
creepiness and
Oh, yeah.
um yeah,
It's
I
a
don't think
different
it
feel,
has to
though.
be there. Well, maybe you're romanticizing it because I'm here every day and I go to whatever. I go to the coffee shop and I'm not afraid, but maybe you're
Yeah.
thinking, "Oh my god, New Hampshire." You know,
Well, maybe not so much like the fear, but the feel, right? These places have an identity. You nailed it. Like New Orleans has a very distinct identity,
Mm,
and even if it's like I can experience New Orleans, when I go to New Orleans, I'm down for the experience of being in New Orleans. It feels different than Nebraska, right?
mhm, yeah.
It feels different. And I'm just saying Nebraska because Chris Panettiere popped in my head for a second. And his book was like when he wrote the Redemption of Morgan Bright, I thought, who writes a book in Nebraska? but
Yeah.
but he did.
I wish that I said hello to him. I recognized his face at AuthorCon and I'm like, "Who is that?" And I my ignorance, now I know who he is, and I've even, like
And now you can stalk him.
I
It's
listened well, I actually, learned a lot about him from listening to your episode,
oh, right.
and, I'm like, "He's an interesting guy," and, "Whoa, he's an attorney," and all that stuff, and then
Yes.
I happened to, like, Google him as an attorney, which is stalking, and, I see a YouTube video of him, like, kicking ass in court over, like, Johnson& and Johnson.
Yeah,
And he had a great argument too about like I won't get into it, but it was
sure.
he it's no wonder he won, like I
Right.
just anyway, I wish that I had said hello to him. And sorry for that
No, it's
tangent.
good. Now, Chris is brilliant. Yeah, I was joking around with him offline during that episode that we're like recovered professionals. We're like we had to go do professional things before we were able to go. Okay, can I go do something fun now?
Yeah,
Like
this reminds me of something that you're like we were talking before that you might
uh-huh.
want to, make it your career and stuff.
Yep.
And I was listening to a podcast and Jason, it was I forget the name of the podcast, but it was a YouTube video and it was Chad Lutsky and Jason Brandt, who are also on the Final Guys YouTube podcast thing. But they were talking about how when you write as a side gig, it's oh wow, it's so fun and everything. But when it becomes your gig, it becomes a job, and I'm kind of afraid of that. You know what I
That's a
mean?
valid thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, be careful what you wish for. Maybe like
Well, I
just
think I think it works. I think it works if you can control that experience for yourself, and I think it comes with some maturity. And I think that's why it works for maybe like the late bloomers like me in the group that always wanted to do that, but when we were younger and we didn't think it was possible. And then maybe later in life when you've had a career and you've got the ability to have you have some stability and you don't necessarily have to worry about that book putting the food on your table or
yeah,
paying your mortgage or whatever. You can treat it differently. Also, you don't have the stress of like these obligations, right? Like it's funny because writing Bless the Mother, my editor Zach said, "Hey, I think you're having a little bit of like a sophomore funk, not in the writing, but in your head. Like you're treating this differently than you did the first book." Like I was just having such a great time with Burn the Girls. and I was having a great time with Bless the Mother, but I was being more critical of myself. And he's like, "I think that's just because you're looking at your writing differently." And I thought, "Oh,
Which is
no."
part of that,
Yeah.
that whole,
Yeah, I was like,
growing pains thing that we were talking about too.
"Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You have to like when I might be interrupting you here, but like I
No, no."
came out like on fire, like this is the best thing, and it's gonna be a movie,
Yeah.
and like just you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of a thing.
And who knows? Maybe it will be. You don't have
Well,
clue.
I know, but then I'm like, I'm even like imposter syndrome. What's that? Like I don't have that. And then a year later, oh shit, feels like shit. I hate that.
Oh, there's a term for this.
Yeah, that's what they were talking about.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it's the military or whatever, I've just got this, like, head down, like, run hard kind of experience. A lot of it had to do with my upbringing as well, but that helped me get around some of that, I think, just to kind of quiet myself a little bit and just stay focused on writing the damn story. The problem for me was I was writing in a different way, a different process than I had used previously,
Were
and that
you thinking too much? Is that
I
what you're
was,
saying?
but I was thinking too much because I had plot less. So I was doing less plotting,
Oh,
more pantsing, and because of that, I was analyzing in the moment, and I feel like I just didn't have the appropriate balance of that. Now, ironically, you won't tell when you read the story because I didn't, I'm still a plotter. I'm a plantser or whatever you want to call it, a
I'm
hybrid.
a plotter too.
Yeah, but I don't plot to the same level as a lot of people I've written with. Like, I've worked on projects with them, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, look at you. This is like a plot." Like,
Mm,
I feel like I could copy and paste this thing into the book and, like, spend an hour or 2 with it, and we're done. Like,
yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't feel like it feels like you did a lot of the writing already. I don't get to that level of plotting. I need to know what the
No, I don't
main.
either. Have an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I do as well, and I'm like, "What's the main thing that needs to happen in this
Yeah.
chapter?" The polarity, the positives and negatives. Where am I pulling on my main themes throughout the book? It's easier for me to see that. I need to see that on the
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
I spent all summer, like, on my next one, doing the Excel spreadsheet, you
Yep.
know? So, like, you're not really writing paragraphs,
Right.
but you wanna know where you're gonna be going, and then
Yeah.
you probably already know this, but, like, then you sit down to write and you're like, "Bullet point 1, I'm gonna write about that," and then you're like, "Where was I gonna go with that?" And you can at least refer back to your spreadsheet and go, "Oh, yeah." And it's kinda like having 2 points of view because you have that
Yeah.
point of view from a couple months ago when you made the thing, and then the
Yeah.
one when you're sitting at the keyboard.
Oh, and it's wild how different my plots look than the book.
Yeah.
Because in the moment, I will honor my current position as the
Yes.
writer over the plot. Oh, sorry. Edit that out, Caleb. I'll honor the I try to honor the moment as the writer and not so much as the planner.
Well, that's because you're standing in the guy or the
Yeah.
character's shoes
Yeah, you're
right then.
mid-conversation, right? Yeah,
You're not looking from the ceiling like you were when you were making the
right.
Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
At least that's how I feel.
So hopefully if you're a reader and you're listening to this, you're going, "Oh," like, there's a look behind the curtain a little bit about, like, the voice of the author when they're writing the story, right? Because in your case, you went through that process several times with this book. I mean, I don't wanna underestimate how much work you put into doing this.
No, I don't either, but it's like you said with I don't know if you said it when we were recording or not, but you mentioned, like, you have this drive that's kinda related to ADHD.
Yep.
Like, you
Yeah.
well, that's kinda like mine too. It's like,
Yeah.
this book is not finished. In the back of my mind, it's like, it's still not done, it's
Yeah.
still it's a great I love the story, but there's something that I need to do to it to make it feel like it's done,
Mm.
and, anyway, I have that now.
Yeah, you got it done.
Yeah, exactly. And now, honestly, I feel free, and I also have this, Hell on High, the which I call my sophomore one. I talk about sophomore slump, or not slump, but fear of sophomore slump.
Mm.
I spent, I want to say, 2 years writing it, and it's not close to being as thick as Mildred or the other story, just because I didn't want that sophomore slump, and I wanted to make sure that I liked it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
okay, like there, I did go through some lumps. I sent it in to a couple people that read it, and like they're like, well, you need to do this and that, and I couldn't hear the excitement. Plus, it's not. Again, get into our little subgenres. It's not a haunted house. It's technically adventure horror, where um, the fear, the scary things come along when you're on a not a vacation, but like a trek. And I spent so much time on that with that sophomore thing that slowed me down too. But anyway, I forget
Right.
where I was going with that, but anyway.
So let's talk a little bit about that work, since we have a few minutes here. I want to make sure that we can make people aware of both of these great books that you have out right now. Hell on High being the one you were just referencing. Hell on High was actually the first book of yours that I saw. Picked it up at AuthorCon last year, and super excited to see it. What a cool cover. Is that the same cover artist for both books?
No, no.
Okay.
Um, this guy, I found him on Instagram. His name is Mateus Roberts. He's a
Okay.
Brazilian, and my wife is Brazilian too. So I started the story in Brazil.
Oh,
Um, the heroine of the story, it's a female lead, main character, is in a situation where her life is in danger and she has to flee Brazil. And um, obviously, she's not documented, and she has to make it to the United States, um, which is a trek in itself. Like it's a
yeah.
there's a jungle in Panama slash Colombia that you
Yes.
can YouTube it. It's called the Darien Gap. She's got to go through all of that. That's like mini adventure horror part one. Then she makes it to um, America, and she had to flee so fast that she left her little sister in Brazil in danger.
Mm,
Um, so she's cleaning houses, which is a common thing with undocumented immigrants. Um, and she realizes that it's going to take her forever to save money to pay to have her sister rescued, because she's in, you know, she actually is going to have to pay more than the average person because she's in that much danger. And on the weekend, she starts burning off steam by hiking in the mountains of New Hampshire. Um, and she ends up meeting a guy that he's like a rich boy dentist who is a climber, and he's using the ropes and everything. And turns out he has connections. And this again takes place back in early 70s for the same reasons, pretty much. And it turns out that she has the possibility of becoming the first woman to climb Mount Everest. And if she
wow.
does that, she will be able to um, get all the money she needs to save her sister, like that. And I won't go any further than that, except to say that I was always fascinated by the dead bodies that they leave on Mount Everest. Like, and what I've found with readers of this book is like some people that the people that like that are fascinated that real life climbers have to pass a dead body that's been there for years. Like there's one called Green Boots. I think he's missing now. Like he just went missing. Like I don't know if the Chinese took him and threw him down in a removed him from the mountain, but they're frozen to the mountain. If you have any kind of if you feel that in your gut, you're gonna love this book. Other people see it as broad daylight, and oh well, there's a dead body, and they just don't feel that in their gut, and they might be like, "Well, that's not so scary." But you know, again, like I said, I spent 2 years or whatever on this, and I got it to where I like it, and there you go.
And
Yeah,
obviously it's been out for a little bit, right? I mean, would you put it out last year?
23. Yeah,
23, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Hell on High.
yep.
And you got a blurb from Laurel Hightower.
She's a friend, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to have her as a friend. And I don't know too many people that don't like Laura Hightower, and
Yeah. Yeah, Laurel's
She's
awesome.
just she's great.
Yeah, really is. I was happy to see that when I looked the book up, on Amazon. So I'll pull links down, guys. If you're listening to this, I'll pull links down for each of the books. You can check the show notes, and you can find the books that way. So this way, uh, if you're in need of a little assist, there's going to be links down there. And so, Michael, I got to ask you what might feel like a bit of a random set of questions to close out here, but tell me about Jaws sand. Now, both of the books I've gotten from you have come with small bottles of sand.
Oh, I gave you one. Oh,
I
I didn't know
love
you
it.
had two. I would have saved one. Just kidding.
That's okay. I can forward it on to some other great soul if you'd like, but one of them went to my daughter, and she goes, "What is this?" And I said, "It's sand from the beach for the movie Jaws." And she goes, "Okay, why do you have this,
Yeah, I know. Well, look,
Dad?"
you were saying before the podcast, like, oh, that's the nerdiest thing I've ever said, and blah blah blah. A couple of nerd references, and like, well, you're looking at one. I'm a nerd, and I'm a Jaws nerd. And in 2021, we went to Martha's Vineyard, which is right here in Massachusetts, and it still looks like Jaws. Like it
Mm,
looks like the movie. They don't change anything there.
yeah.
But if you're driving along the highway and you realize, well, there's the little inlet where he swam in and ate the guy on the little rowboat. It's like it's right there. It looks
Wow.
yeah, it's great. I love it. I mean, it's expensive as hell, but it's Jaws, right? So there was a map. I was gonna print off a copy of it and put it in your book, and I
Oh,
don't think I did, or maybe I did.
I do have it. Yeah.
Well, the link that's on that is gone. Somebody put together like a Google Maps thing of all the Jaws filming locations,
Oh,
and one of them is the part of the first scene in the movie where Chrissy is eaten by the shark, where she's hanging onto the buoy.
yeah.
So I find this place, and I go down this road. It's just private property and everything, and I'm trespassing. And I go in there. I park. I walk up over this knoll, and I look, and boom, you can see the land masses in the on the horizon. And I took a quick picture, and I had like a an envelope, like a like a Manila envelope, and I put some sand in there, and I I went home and I made all those little bottles of sand. I printed labels. It's like a little, I don't know, 1 ounce bottle with a little cork in it. And I glued all the corks in there because I was going to go to Scares That Care in 2021. That was my first time down there. So I'm handing those out, trying to make friends. And the one, everybody's like, "Oh, thanks," like Adam Caesar's like, "Hey, let me give you a book,"
Yeah, it's
and
super cool.
give Bina, yeah. But one guy, and I don't think he would mind me saying this, but who do you think would be the one guy that would didn't want it? If
He
you could
didn't
just,
wanna take it,
yeah.
and should I aim for someone who might be a surprise to hear that about?
Mm, well, just think of the brash personality.
Oh.
It's Brian Keene.
See, I've
I
been
go, hey, Brian, nice to meet you. Would you sign my book? And
sure.
I also, would you like this Jaws sand? I feel like an asshole, right? He goes, nah, I'm all set.
So,
No,
it's
yeah.
funny you say that because I've only interacted with Brian Keene, a handful of times, and every time it's been super, like, cool. He's been really nice,
No, he was cool. He was just
yeah.
Brian Keene. You know what
Now
I
it's
mean?
just
Like,
funny because 'cause I've stood next to him and seen him have interactions like that with other
yeah.
people, and I've always been like, "I'm just not in
He's
this
running the show
conversation."
and I'm
Yeah.
interrupting him, and he's like, he's got 100 things to do, and I'm
He's like, "I'll
giving him
pass."
some stupid jaw sand.
Well, Brian, if you're watching this, or listening to this, we're gonna have to get one of those little Jaws
I still have
sand.
some if you want it, Brian.
We're gonna have to bring it
If
down
you
to
feel
Vortex
bad
Books.
about, you know,
We'll bring it to Vortex,
yeah.
and then he can tell you no again.
If anybody wants some, I do have some. Hit
I
me
thought it
up.
was super cool, and it just kinda caught me off guard when you first did it. You were like, "Hey, check this out." And I was like, "Oh, where's this coming from?" I thought may have a relation to your book at first. Um,
Nah, just a Jaws nerd.
just a cool thing.
Yeah.
So you must have read me as a nerd and been like, "This guy's a nerd. He'll appreciate
No, I
this."
gave them out to everybody.
Oh, everyone's just
I'm,
okay.
it was like a self-deprecating thing, like, hey, I'm pathetic here.
No, stop. It's still sitting on top. The one you gave me at AuthorCon is still sitting on top of my bureau upstairs
I think
because
it's on a few
yeah.
shelves. Yeah, I know that like Chad Lutsky has he has a piece of the what's the name of the book from the Evil Dead? The bad,
Oh, the Necronomicon?
whatever that book is in that was in the
Yeah,
movie. Like he knew somebody that helped film the movie or something, and he has like a little
piece of it.
piece of that. So like he, it's just little movie memorabilia, so
Yeah. Yeah, hell
that
yeah.
kind of stuff.
Oh, it's so cool. I got a chirp out of it because to this day, the opening scene of Jaws is still one of my all-time favorite horror
Yeah,
scenes. And I
yeah,
don't know
it's
if it was
great.
my age, the
No, 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 no.
reality.
People are obsessed. I mean,
Oh,
there's
so good.
like Jonathan Jan's huge.
Yeah.
I gave him one. He loved it.
Well, that makes up for the Brian Keene thing.
Yeah, who needs Brian Keene? Except I need a table at AuthorCon. Just kidding.
It's kind of funny because the first time I had to talk to Brian about something business related, um, was the most nervous I've ever been to talk to Brian Keene, and I've
That's
talked to
how I
him.
felt. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm saying. Like you're offering like something lame. Like it could be either like the coolest thing in the world to him, or it could be like, what the fuck do I need sand for? You know?
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Okay, so that was the first one. The second one is gonna be without giving any spoilers, tell me about the flies, just for your readers. I want them to
Whew.
understand the connection. It's on your website.
Well,
It's related to your book.
yep. And
So how do you premise people that go, "Oh, I saw the flies on your website or I see it on your ads." Like, what's going on there?
the flies, when I can't, like you said, don't spoil
Don't
anything,
spoil it.
are all about Mildred.
There you go.
They're on Mildred.
So you guys
They
are gonna
follow her around.
you're gonna have to read the book to find out why, people.
Yeah. Like the little kid doesn't have any flies around him, but she does.
But she does.
Yeah.
That's important. Um, I'm already seeing well, when I first saw the flies in the book, I was thinking, "Oh, this might be something similar to the starlings that I have used in my
Yeah, I thought that was
series,"
cool. I like the starlings.
but it's definitely different,
Yes.
because they don't have the same symbolism whatsoever,
And
and,
they're not supernatural flies.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was funny because when I first started reading it, I was like, "Oh, where's this gonna go?" Because my starlings have a very specific purpose, and some people pick up on it, and some people don't, and I can't wait to get to the part where I go, "Ah," like with, when
Like you're
the
not there yet, right?
well, the healthy meaning yeah, I'm not quite there
Yeah,
yet,
because I
like
don't know. I don't know.
okay.
I haven't figured it out.
It'll it'll hit me. Um, it'll hit me. Okay, cool. All right, dude. Well, man, I'm so well, one, thank you for making so much time today. We were able to spend some time catching up before the recording session, which is awesome. For the people that listen to the show, they know I say that every week. I'm like, I like to hang out a little bit before we record. It gets just catch up with people who I enjoy being around. You're such a nice dude, and I had such a great time hanging out with you at AuthorCon last year. Are you going to be at AuthorCon again this year?
No, probably not this year.
All right.
I'd probably go every other or something like that,
Sure,
but, it's an
sure.
expensive weekend.
It is. I'm fortunate to live 20 minutes from the
Yeah.
location.
See,
So,
I live, I don't know if you've heard of the Merrimack Valley
yep,
Halloween Book Festival.
yep.
It's right here.
Oh,
So it's 3 miles. It's a one-day thing,
3 miles?
3.5.
Oh, dude.
Yeah,
Well, if I
it
don't
is.
get invited, maybe I'll just come up anyway and crash on
You
your.
should. I mean, it's 6 hours of intensity, like, it's really like, they hand out cough drops so people can, because 'cause you're
Wow.
just jaw
Wow.
you're talking a mile a minute, and, yeah, it was great, like, it's fun, and then there's a dinner afterward, which you might don't edit this out. Hopefully, they won't hear this, but just crash it. Crash the dinner.
Just crash the dinner.
Yeah, no, there's a dinner at a restaurant here, and
That's great.
there's plenty of room.
I'll just blame it on someone that I know. I won't
Yeah,
blame it on you. We'll pick on someone else that
just
I love
blend
and
in.
yeah. I'll be like, yeah, Robert Otone told me to come."
He was here this year. Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
yeah. No, there's been
Uh,
some big names like Paul Tremblay was there this year, and then we've had Josh Mallerman, and
yeah,
Sadie was there, and Rio Ewers, and just some Jonathan Jans, on and
excellent.
on. Yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
Ronald Malfi was there.
It's one of the events I haven't been able to get to yet that I'm really looking forward to experiencing for the first time in the future. So maybe next year. Maybe next year. All right, cool, man. Well, do you have any other like events coming up, or do you have any promotional type things going on for the
I'm
book?
going to be doing on Saturday the 16th at I think it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I think it's going to be live. Is a book launch with Bridget's Gate, and I
Oh,
talked to Ross Jeffrey today. He's going to be there, and Brendan LaFaro too.
nice.
So I don't know if this podcast will be your podcast will be out, before people will hear that or be able to hear it. But that's the only thing I have on the schedule. But yeah, Mildred Wells, The Legend of Mildred Wells, November 12th, and I think you'll like it.
Awesome. All right, guys. I've got my copy. You guys need to go get your copy. It's awesome. I'm enjoying it. Make sure you guys check out michaelclarkbooks.com to learn all about Michael's work. Also, he's got some really cool stuff on there. He's got a whole blog. Mm, blogs are
Well,
fun.
it's not very up to date, but if you want Jaws sand,
If you want the Jaws sand, go to
yeah,
the website. And of course, keep an eye on socials, visit Twitter, connect with Michael, and you too can become the recipient of a segment of Jaws sand uh,
and
and
figure out what those damn flies are.
and figure out what those damn flies are up to. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for being on the episode, Michael, and for everyone that's out there. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.